Hi everyone, and welcome to Moxxie Life Coaching. I'm Michelle, and I'll be your host as we explore what life coaching is and how it can empower you to create and live your best life. We'll talk about topics ranging from our own self-defeating behaviors to getting to know our authentic selves. Together, we'll investigate a variety of self-coaching modalities and explore a wide range of topics relevant to getting the most out of the life that you are actively creating. New episodes will drop every Tuesday, so please subscribe so you don't miss out on the great hints, tips, and tricks, and generally awesome content that will help you create your best life. So welcome, and thank you for listening. Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Moxxie Life Coaching Podcast. Last week we talked about our critical inner voices and about all of the ways that they are able to undermine our positivity, they're able to undermine our confidence. And this week we're going to be talking about our inner sages, or our soul voices. And the way I think of my inner sage is an amalgamation of my intuition, of my spirit guides, of whatever benevolent beings who have my best interest at heart are out there in the universe. And I try very hard to work to stay connected to that wisdom, because I do not remember a time when my inner sage has led me astray, quite honestly. Of course, the challenge is in learning to listen to your inner sage and learn to manage the inner critics. Your inner sage is really, I think, your own inner wisdom. It's that combination of all of those voices, all of those past lives, all of that positive energy coming into your energy field for you to use. Unlike your inner voices, unlike those inner critical voices, your inner sage tends to stay out of the drama. They're not the ones who are going to pop up and hop on that hamster wheel with you. They're going to sit back and observe, essentially. And they will observe until you make an effort to invite them in, to connect them to your everyday life. They're there all the time, but we're often unaware of their existence, right? So what we need to do is we need to call on them and acknowledge them and ask them for their help. And for someone like me, who is a fairly analytical person, it was really uncomfortable for me to begin to do that. It felt woo-woo. It felt silly. But as I may have mentioned in my first podcast, or I know I mentioned on the website, that I really hit a point in my life where I just needed some flippin' help. And out of desperation, that's exactly what I did, was call on those inner voices, the inner sage, not the inner critics. So your inner sage is always going to tell you the truth. They'll be kind about it, but they will tell you the truth. And they will always be kind. They're not going to be snarky. They're not going to plant seeds of doubt in your mind. And that is an excellent way to start to identify the difference in your mind when you start to hear and want to differentiate between your inner critic and your inner sage? What are they telling you? Are they getting you wound up? Are they supporting you? Are they criticizing you? Or are they providing a sense of peace? The inner sages are simply unlikely to crash the party, right? You just have to invite them in. Acknowledging their existence and asking yourself and asking them to become more aware and awake of your interactions is really enough to begin the relationship. Just like I did, throwing up my hands in desperation. And before too much longer, after doing that, I really did start to see a difference. And I will say that it has been a process for me to develop my relationship with my inner self and my inner sage, and to learn to listen and pay attention. And I suspect that it is going to be an ongoing process for the rest of my life. But it has been really pretty freaking amazing to watch how things change when you do make that effort. And some of you out there could be saying, well, duh, yeah, that's what religion has been about for a million years. And I was not raised in a traditionally religious family. And my personal experiences with traditional religion were somewhat negative. So I really felt weird reaching out to these spirit guides. But I have to tell you that I'm very glad I did. And whether you consider your spirit guides your intuition, whether you consider your inner sage your past ancestors, whether you consider them your spirit guides, whether you consider them your angels, it doesn't really matter. They don't care what you consider them. They don't care what you call them. All they're looking for is acknowledgement and an outreached hand. If you want to try to reach out and actively connect with your spirit guides or with your inner sage, or I don't even know what to call them at this point, with your, let's call it your inner sage. I will try to remember to call it that. You can do it through simply sitting quietly for a minute or two, allowing your thoughts to settle, allowing your mind to quiet as much as possible, and opening your heart to the possibility of bringing in some guidance. I would also suggest placing some white light around you as a protection. And I would also suggest that you speak clearly and indicate that the only beings, angels, spirit guides, whatever you want to communicate with, are those that have your best interest at heart. So once you have settled in, once you have established who it is you want to speak to, you simply need to start talking. And it sounds really silly, and it is a weird feeling at first, but it truly does to work. And I think personally that the magic is in the asking, not necessarily the words themselves, but I have found that speaking it out loud as opposed to thinking it does seem to have a stronger impact on the actual manifestation. And I actually heard something recently, and I'm sorry I can't quote from where, something to the effect of that is the case, that speaking it creates more energy, and that energy connects with those spirit guides or that inner self more easily than a thought. So for what it's worth, that's what I heard, and sounds realistic, and it sounds to me, or in my experience, it's something that has been proven to be true. So you just want to explain that you'd like to connect. Hey, I'm here. I feel really weird about this. I hope my husband doesn't walk in and hear me talking to no one. But I would like to introduce myself, and I would like to reach out to you and let you know that I would like to create a connection and see what we can do together. And then just sit for a few minutes. Let it sink in. Let the energy that you put out there into the universe disperse. Let your mind quiet again, and pay attention to what you see, what you feel, what you hear. Observe your thoughts. Observe any physical sensations or mental images that pop into your head. Just because we all hear and see things from our inner sages differently. And by beginning to observe those thoughts and sensations and mental images, you should be able to, you'll want to continue that, as I guess is what I'm saying. Continue that and cultivate that, because it will make it easier for you if you can start to recognize how it is they're communicating with you, or how it is that you are receiving the information. And then just thank them. Let them know that you're working to stay open and receptive to their insight and their assistance. The more often you do this exercise, the easier it's going to be to enter that relaxed state where you can begin to develop a relationship. And the more often you do it, the less foreign it will feel, the less, I don't know, the less weird, I guess. So how does your inner sage communicate? Well, in my experience, which is admittedly limited compared to some people, my experience has been that they are usually quiet. They're not the life of the party types of energy. They're more of a quiet, consistent force, and their messages, in my experience, are usually quiet. Often they come out of the blue. They seem random. They seem like something that just dropped into the middle of your brain, a thought that just dropped into the middle of my brain that seemed to come from no place I was cognizant of. I guess that makes sense. So unlike the voice that is in your head, those inner voices that just prattle on and on and on, inanely, annoyingly, the inner sage is a being of few words, and potentially a being of no words, depending on how you accept or how you receive the information from them. You may not gain knowledge from them in a verbal form at all. Most common, and this really goes to this whole world of intuition. And if you go down the intuition trail, there is an incredible amount of information about the different clairs, clairvoyance, clairaudience, and that type of thing. And while I am fascinated, it is not at all my area of expertise. So what I'm going to speak to here is my personal experience and what has worked for me. I have found that most often the communication that I receive is either what I call a drop-in knowing or a brief visual flash of something, or an auditory, I'm going to call it a sensation because it's not something I'm hearing with my physical ears. It's an auditory connection where I'm hearing a voice again in my head. And all of this talk about voices in our heads, I know is kind of silly, but that's truly kind of how it feels. It feels like it's originating from the very center of my brain. And it could be something as simple as remember to close the fence gate. It could be something as simple as a flash of, oh my goodness, me locking my keys in my car. It could be something as simple as just this knowledge, this knowing that, let me think. I mean, it could be anything. That my dog is going to throw up tomorrow. I don't know. I mean, that kind of stuff. Actually, honestly, it's usually a little bit more profound than that, but honestly, not a whole lot. In my experience, this whole inner voice thing, as I have learned how to use it, has really been focused on, in a lot of ways, just mundane day-to-day things. And those mundane day-to-day things have been happening frequently enough that I'm beginning to learn how to recognize them and how to work with them. And learning how to work with them is what will potentially make your life easier. It will make your life more fulfilling, or help you create a more fulfilling life for yourself. That's a better way to explain that. So how do you recognize it? How do you tell the difference in that inner voice and the inner, how do you tell the difference in the inner sage and the inner critic? There we go. The first thing you do is really just you need to pay attention. You'll begin to notice the difference in the mind or the ego-based thoughts and the intuitive or inner sage-based thoughts. If the thought that you're having is something that is on the hamster wheel, where it's just going around and around and around, and it is doing you no good, it's doing no one else any good, it's like a dog chasing its tail. Well, maybe that does the dog some good, but I don't know. Anyway, that is most likely your mind, your ego, your inner critic. If it is, as I said before, just a quiet drop-in or a little visual flash or something that you're hearing in your mind, it's often or more likely to be your inner sage. Your inner sage is not going to obsess about something. Your inner sage is not going to be telling you, oh my God, I can't believe she said that. Can you believe she said that? Oh my gosh, da, 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 da. Your inner sage is never going to go there. That is your ego, your inner critic, that whole thing. A lot of us, I think, I know I have missed a lot of those inner sage communications and those inner sage messages. just because I wasn't even aware really that they were coming through. And every once in a while, there would be a weird coincidence where maybe I did recognize it, but I never really put the two together, I guess. So if none of this resonates with you, if none of this paying attention to it from an intellectual or a mental or a mental energetic standpoint makes any sense, you might want to try paying attention to how your body feels. When you are trying to make a decision, or when there's something going on in your life, our bodies react, and our bodies can feel sensation in various places. And if we get to know those sensations, we can begin to recognize what is coming from where. So where is the sensation? Is it an easy, comfortable sensation to be with? Is it a peaceful sensation? Or does it make you edgy? Does it make you anxious? It all goes back to versions of the gut feeling, in my mind. For me, if there is something that intuitively my inner sage is really strongly against, I will almost always feel that as a physical sensation in my solar plexus. Your solar plexus is essentially between between the breastbone and your belly button, in that area. And that area for me is the area that, what do I want to call it? Contracts. It's almost like a physical contraction of sensation. And learning to recognize that has helped me immensely. I'm hoping to get brave enough to do a YouTube video for you of a moving meditation that I use to help clear all of those energy channels in the body, and that I use to help me tap into where in my body I'm feeling something and releasing it. It is just, in my experience, the most wonderful moving meditation. I just need to get the guts enough to throw on my yoga clothes and do the whole thing. So we'll see about that. You might be asking, well, why do I need to get to know myself? I feel like I already know myself. I've been living with myself for the past 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years. Why? Well, because creating a relationship with your inner sage is one of the steps that you can take to truly getting to know yourself better. And the more we know ourselves, the less able we are to be triggered, in my experience. If I can respond to something rather than react to something, that's almost always the best way to go. And by getting to know myself, when I'm triggered by something, it's easier for me to do that responding as opposed to reacting. The other place that you will find some use is in support, in like a day-to-day support. And again, those of you who have been traditionally religious and have had relationships with your angels or with your God or with whatever higher power you identify with are going to say that this is just no-brainer. Of course, you get the support if you ask for the support. And I have found personally that I'm braver. And I'm braver because I have a fundamental understanding that the universe is supporting me, that I'm not just out there on my own, doing my own thing, hoping for the best. Or at least I'm not doing that anymore. That I have created enough of a relationship that I do genuinely feel like I have the support, like the bottom is not going to fall out from under me. And there have been past times in my life, we're just going to talk about this one today, when I have not felt supported, where I felt just completely lost. And I'm very grateful for the relationship that I have been able to establish and for that support. Knowing yourself more, getting that support is going to help you notice sooner when things get out of whack. I'm able to now notice much faster when I'm going down a negative little bunny trail, and I'm able to make an adjustment. And I do attribute most of that to just getting to know myself better, paying more attention, and actively receiving the support that's out there. You can also use your relationship with your inner sage or your intuition to check in, to help you answer a question, to help you assess a situation. And it could be something as simple as, hey, my best friend hurt my feelings, and I can't tell if she is just clueless or if there's something else going on. Help me out here. Help me clarify this relationship with this friend of mine. Who knows, right? It could be anything. It could be, oh my gosh, I have this feeling in the pit of my stomach, and I've just been offered this job, but it feels bad. And I really need this job, but man, it does not feel right. Trust me, pay attention to that. I actually did that once on the way to a job interview. Was just literally, if I could have been physically smacked upside the head with a 2x4, I would have been. That's how intense the communication was. And I needed the job desperately, and I shook it off, and I got the job, and I took the job, and it was a nightmare. I quit within about 3 months. So had I listened to my inner voice, I would not have put myself through that ridiculous experience. The other place I personally feel paying attention to your inner sage is appropriate and extremely helpful is in self-coaching. Through self-coaching, you can begin to to know yourself better. You can begin to identify your blocks. You can begin to do some goal setting. And self-coaching can be something as simple as literally meditating and reaching out to your spirit guides and opening up your mind to their assistance. It could also mean the use of some less than traditional coaching tools. I use the tarot almost every day in my self-coaching practice. Now, I have a professional coach that I work with on a regular basis, and I absolutely love her, and she has helped me immensely. And I only meet with her every 2 weeks. So there's a whole lot that goes on in my life between our meetings. And for me, I will often use the tarot as a way to touch base with my inner sage and see how things are going, see where things are going. You could also use oracle cards if you are not someone who wants to take the time to learn the tarot card meanings. You can also use the tarot cards in a way that is similar to oracle cards, and we'll learn a little bit more about that in a future episode. Other things could include using pendulums, using the I Ching, using runes. There are so many different options, and you can learn to integrate and invite your inner sage into these experiences and these tools, and it will make your day-to-day life a little more smooth. It will help you once you begin to connect, once you begin to reliably receive. Strike that. Once you begin to reliably hear, because we're always receiving, it's just a matter of whether we're able to hear it. Once you're able to do that, and once you begin to become more comfortable with it and integrate it more into your everyday, you will find that you can recognize that inner sage. You will know when you should be paying attention to it. And it doesn't mean you're never going to lock your keys in your car. But in my experience, it has made life a lot smoother, a lot less less annoying. I don't want to say that life is annoying because it's not. But oftentimes my inner sage, my intuition will give me a heads up about something inconvenient that's coming. And learning to listen to that, learning to recognize that has made my life easier in some ways. And I truly believe that it could be the same for you. So getting to know your inner self is both rewarding and practical. Supposedly, Socrates said that everyone has this knowledge of our inner sage. We just need to remember it. So your inner voice, your inner sage can help you remember what you already know and take advantage of that, because it truly can be a gift. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you found this podcast episode interesting and educational, and I will look forward to talking to you next time. Be well.